This is chapter 2, verse 1, again reading through verse 11. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink, but you have saved the best till now." This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Please be seated. The challenge sometimes of taking a biblical story or account and teaching on it is that sometimes people have heard the story repeatedly and it can get old. Sometimes people are hearing it for the first time, and so you kind of have to balance some things out. So a very abbreviated lesson that we can get from this that I like is that in this part, and it's Jesus' first miracle, by the way. Jesus makes turns the water into wine so that the party never stops. That's the first one. The party just keeps going, and I like that. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today as we go into it. What I want to talk about is, is something that refers to the water, the exact type and kind of water that was changed into the exact type and kind of wine. Before I do that, I just kind of like to share a revelation that I've had that maybe you have had or are having, and that is this. When I was younger, and by the way, like I said yesterday, I was able to to go to memorial service, and so I spent a lot of time on the road thinking about what life was like when I was 22 and what I was going through and the experiences I had there, the people that I met. Maybe you have had those times in your life where you had some period of time where you've been able to think and kind of go back in the years and just kind of revisit where you were then and where you are now and so on and so forth. But in that process, I remember something. I remember experiencing a mindset, if you will, a thought. And that was this. When I was younger, I don't know, 7, 8, around there. When I was younger, it seemed to me that all the grown-ups in my life, all the grown-ups I see, all the grown-ups had it all figured out. All the grown-ups that I saw seemed to have it all figured out. The grown-ups were the ones that could do whatever they wanted to do. They didn't have to go to school. They didn't have to do their homework. They didn't have to get on the bus or do whatever the teacher says. The grown-ups, in my view, as a young child, the grown-ups were the ones that had the best life in the world, free from worry. And I couldn't wait when I was a little kid to become a grown-up, because the day I became a grown-up, I was going to have it made. I was wrong. And it seems to me, as I was at the memorial service yesterday, whether you're young or relatively young, whether you're in your 20s, whether you're having a family or trying to raise kids, whether you are, as I saw a number of people at the memorial service, having some issues just trying to stand up. That life always has this way of overwhelming us. And when we get overwhelmed, when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel like we are confused or defeated or out of energy or any of those things, we become really susceptible to thinking in ways that are not true. Now today in this story, Jesus has yet to perform one miracle. All he knows, if you've read the first chapter of John, all you know is that as he comes out of the water, the voice tells him, this is who you are. And that's all he knows. But that's all he needs to know. If you know who you are, if you truly know who you are, then you don't have to be pulled or manipulated by other people who try to convince you of who you are. And in this story, Jesus attends a wedding. I love church functions. It doesn't really matter if they're Jewish functions or if they're Christian functions. Church functions are church functions, whether they're a memorial service or a wedding or whatever they are. I enjoy them, especially after the service when they have church food. There's something about memorial service potato salad that's really, really good. I don't know what it is, but it happens that way. And so here Jesus is at the wedding, and they have, if you are unaware of their custom, they have alongside of the entrance to a building or the location where the wedding is, they have big, huge stone jars of water. And that they don't fill them to the top because they're meant to put your hands in there so that you can wash your hands. And the reason for that is because back then when people would travel, they would generally have to travel a day just to get there. And nobody wanted to travel a full day and then just go to an hour wedding and then head right back. So the wedding would take on 2 or 3 days just so that people that live far away could get there in time, spend the day with the ceremony, and then hang out and then maybe come back the next day. Because they traveled so much and so long, when they would get there, they'd take these big jars that were not completely full, but, you know, full enough that you could put your hands in, and then everything that they had carried with them, all the dirt, all the grime, all the dust, all the, oh God, it's hot in here, sweat, all that junk they could wash off. So over time, these jars became filled with, you know what I'm saying. And hopefully the dirt and stuff would kind of settle so that some of the water on the top you could still use for a while. It was worthless water after a while. It's similar to kind of what we have today. I was traveling, like I said, and I don't know if you're like me, but when I like to travel, I like to eat peanuts or whatever. And the thing of it is, when I had to fill up with gas, and I take that hose and I put it in there and I fill it with gas, I realized that during that day there was probably 27,000 other people touching that thing. And there could be somebody who's like, and then now I'm touching. I know that. I can't see it, but I know it. So I'm like, I'm not going to put anything in my hand and then eat it. I had an apple I was going to eat. No, I'm going to go wash my hands. But then if you've ever gone to a AM, PM, or one of those kind of bathrooms, you go in there, and more often than not, you wash your hands, you get the soap going, and you rinse them off, and everything's cool. And then you go to get the towel, and oh, no, there's no towel. Now, if it's at a restaurant, generally, if no one's looking, I'll go in the women's restroom and grab some real quickly. I don't just barge in, you know. That's what Mike does. I don't do that. But when you're at a restroom like that at a gas station, there's nothing. All you can do is you got two choices. You can use the toilet paper, which now you got all this thin stuff, and then it sticks to you and it rips, and now it makes a mess. Or you can hopefully look at the door and see if you can back out, because you can't touch anything. But if you look at the door and there's a handle that pulls the door open, now you just have to wait till somebody else comes in. Unless it's a one-stall bathroom, then you're out of luck. That's just how my mind works. Some things don't change. So here Jesus is, there's these 6 big, huge water containers, and it's filled with dirty water. And then there's a problem. Now, if you're like me, or if you've ever had to plan anything, you know just how much work is involved in planning a big event. I mean, you got to plan food, you got to know how many, you RSVP, so you know how many people are going to be there. You've got to plan seating, you've got to plan housing for where these people are going to arrive. It's a big event. Whoever was in charge of this thing messed it up, because you don't run out of wine that early. Somebody messed up. And you know how mad people get when somebody messes up for a wedding? This is a practical story. This isn't a spiritual story. This isn't, he went up on a mountain and became this angel and the voice. No, this is real life. I'm having a barbecue and you run out of barbecue and somebody shows up at the barbecue and they don't have any food. People get angry. People get irritated. If we run out of food, oh man, we only have 3 burgers. Why don't you have the last burger? I hope they don't take the last burger. If they take the last burger. It's like that. It's a real life situation. And it's a real life scenario because his mom just goes, well, you know, do whatever he tells you. He's like, oh, please, Ma. Really? This is what you want me? Nothing real big. No, the blind that can see, that's big. The person that's paralyzed is going to walk, that's huge. The person that's been demon-possessed for years, that's out in the grave and just running around naked and cutting themselves and now is set free from all these demons that have plagued this person over the years. That's huge. This, please, you run out to Bevmo and get more of this. But okay. It just kind of flies in under the radar because he doesn't even bring notice to what he's doing. And so, fill him. And only the servants, only the people that at a party nobody even notices. At a party no one really honors the servants. They're just kind of the hired help that are invisible. The servants are the only ones that realize what happened. And he takes this water that is filthy and soon to be thrown out as completely worthless because different water has different value. You can drink some water you can't drink. Some water you can shower with, but some you can't bathe with. This was the worst. You can't do anything with this after a while. And he takes the water that is completely worthless and he doesn't just change it into wine. He makes it the most valuable at the most valuable wine at the party. And see, there's something about when we feel so overwhelmed, and it never goes away. It's not like you reach 50 and then it goes away. Issue after issue. It was so wonderful for me to reconnect up with a former student. He's now about 40 years old. That's old. Because I'm only 22 when I started teaching, so that... And he's sharing with me, and during his life, this is the issue he's had, and then he's had this issue. And now his mother has an issue with her ankle, and she can't walk all that well. Everybody always has some issue that can be so overwhelming, so huge, that we become susceptible to thinking that it's bigger than our God. We start thinking thoughts when we become exhausted and tired and worn out, just like the water. The water is worn out. It's useless. It's not good for anything. And we start feeling like that water. We feel that way. Tired, nothing left to give, worn out, with no purpose, no value, after years of having people kind of wash their hands and put it on us. That water is so much how we can feel. Just done. And it's Jesus, not in some big, huge event, but just consistent with who he is. It's Jesus that comes in and takes that water, fills it to the brim so that everybody can have some, and transforms it into the best, the most valuable, the most honored. And the scriptures say, as we read this, that not only is this his first miracle, but he thus revealed his glory. Meaning, when you think of the glory of God, we use this term, glory to God in the highest glory. It is an exclamation of praise. It is an exclamation of value. It is the most exquisite, the most beautiful of all. The glory of God carries God's greatest value. And God's greatest value as we experience it in our lives is when he takes us, when we are in the bottom of that barrel of water, and makes us the best wine. And nobody even knows. You see, you and I, we're just human beings. We believe certain things about ourselves, and nobody comes into this world with a fully developed knowing and sense of who we are. Jesus, after his baptism, knew fully who he was. That's the point of the voice. This is who you are. You are my son. We come into this world not knowing who we are, so we rely on what other people tell us, whether it's true or not. And when we rely on what other people say about us, it starts to become a habit. And then there's always this voice in this world that is very quick to demean us, to deceive us. Oh yeah, that's how you always are. You're this, you're that. And then the accusatory voice. Oh, you're always this way. We, like that water, can think and believe ourselves to be of no value. Look how much I've messed up my life. The hugest decisions I've had to make in my life, and I have failed. And if you take a look at my life and the decisions in which I've failed, it has left a trail of carnage. That person's an addict, and that person is in prison, and that person is in struggle. And I am, of all people, a failure at life. We feel worthless, just as if that water was us. And there's no hope for the water, because nothing in Jesus' time or in his life can take that water and make it pure again. Nothing. So we actually believe that even though we have failed in our past and continue to live a life of which we are struggling and feel like we're failing, in the end, there's still going to be no hope, because we don't see how we can get out of this. And these are the voices that plague us over and over. And even when we get some success, it's short-lived, because no longer than we feel a little bit of success when something comes into our lives where that voice takes the opportunity to jump right in and say, yeah, but you're still this. You're still this. And so Jesus, knowing who he was then able to recognize every voice that came against him that wasn't true, and in turn could go to every single person that he met that was in bondage to that same accusatory voice, that same accusatory thought that repeats itself over and over. You're never going to amount to anything. You have failed beyond redemption. And the curse that has come upon you because all of your choices cannot be broken. That voice is what he breaks us free from. Because that voice keeps us stuck in those containers of water. And what God, through Christ, comes in and says, this is not who you are. You are mine. But you don't understand. I do understand. God's love is bigger than your failings. No, not my failings. That's a lie. Yeah, but you don't understand. I've done this. That's a lie too. We can't tell anybody about our family. We got to keep it a secret because that's a lie too. Yes, but I keep repeating the same mistake over. There's no hope for me. That's a lie. I am so messed up. Do you know the family I come from? That's a lie. And God breaks every single one of those voices and says, they're all light. That's why Jesus is the light. Because he brings what is a lie out into the open and exposes it for what it is, a lie. And he takes what we feel when we listen to those insidious voices, and God, we all have them. We all have them. And we all have to battle them every single day. I wish you could get a reprieve. And I can understand why people drink too much and smoke too much and snort too much, because those voices are very painful. I don't judge anybody for trying to avoid them that way. It doesn't work. But I don't blame anybody. I've done it. But Jesus is the one, because he knows who he is, can come in and say, this is who you are. You are not what these voices are telling you you are. In fact, you are far from a failure. You're perfect. I try telling people that from time to time, and you know how quickly it takes them to say, no, I'm not. You're perfect. Yeah, it's almost a knee-jerk reaction, because it's so ingrained in their thinking to think of themselves in such a degrading way. We can do degrading things, and degrading things can be done to us, but it doesn't affect who we are in God, because God's love is bigger, you see. God's love is greater. So not only does Jesus take the thoughts that make us feel like the dirty water and reveal them as lies, he also transforms our minds like this water into thinking and knowing and living in the truth that we, through God's eyes, in God's love, we are the most valuable of all, the best. You are perfect. Perfect in your failure. Perfect in your struggle. Perfect in your pain that you're trying to work through. Perfect in every way. And God, and no one can see it, by the way. Many times people want to see the big sign. I want to see the big transformation. That doesn't happen. More often than not, it's like this. Nobody really sees it. They just do it. It just happens. And God is making you not perfect, but realizing that you already are. I have a son, and so far he's all right. But if he were to go off the rails, that in no way would diminish my love for him. And if I can love that way, my God loves infinitely more, because I'm not even close to loving like God does. Nothing that you've done or has been done to you, nothing that you will do, nothing that follows you through can separate you from the love of God that sees you and is true as the most valuable, the best, perfect. You are not in any way $2 Chuck. For those of us that drink wine, we know what that is. $2 Chuck isn't bad. I mean, on my budget, it's pretty good. We're not going to talk about my wine habits now. All I'm saying is that this was the first of Jesus' miracles. And from here on, he goes through and reveals over and over and over and over again just how valuable every single person that God has brought into this world is. Everyone, regardless. There is not one person that's outside the reach of God's redemption. That's another accusatory voice. Yeah, God's love is great. It just doesn't reach you. That's a lie. It's just not true. So my friends in Christ, as we continue to live out our lives, I invite you to spend this next week and see what it feels like to wake up and look at yourself in the mirror and realize, in the light of God's love, you are perfect. You don't have to work any harder to prove to anybody that you're worth something. You don't have to continue to try to impress someone or try to cover up for your failures because you think someone's going to judge you. Because you, in God's eyes, are perfect. And you always have been. And you always will be. And when you can start to see that within yourself, you'll see it in everybody. Everybody. So that the kingdom isn't right here. It's wherever you are. The kingdom is at Bel Air, where I go and and Marissa works there. She gets me my coffee and she knows that I like it really hot, so she'll make it really hot. But she's had some pretty big health issues as of late. And so the other day, when I saw her, she doesn't know who I am. I mean, you can always tell who they are because they're wearing a name tag. As far as she knows, I could be a stalker. Well, it's true. I mean, I'm kind of weird, not that way, but anyway, we don't need to get into my habits again. The point is, I was getting coffee, and I saw her over on the side of the place having her little snack, and I just walked over to her and I said, "Hey, how you doing? How's your surgery?" "It's getting better." "Cool. I've been praying for you." That's it. That's it. Or when I go to Rite Aid, and I go in and Bladen's working there with all of his tattoos and all the piercings he has. And Bladen's my good buddy because he always tells me ahead of time what beer is on sale so I know what to get. And so when I go up there and I pay for it and I say, "How's your mother doing?" because I know she's got stage 4 cancer. "Well, she's got a couple weeks left." "Yeah, I'm praying for you. Thanks." There's the kingdom. Over a 12-pack of beer and a $20 bill. Just like the wedding. It's not real religious, but it is sacred. And that's how we walk in the kingdom. Every day, every person, every conversation is sacred. You are sacred. Everyone is sacred in this kingdom. And as we go through this week, my prayer, my hope, is that we don't forget it. That we remember it. And most of us will. But God's faithful to remind us. We are the best. Let's pray.